Hello there. Today I'd like to start off by discussing developmental growth and gait. Little do we ever pay attention to the pattern of how we walk or move our feet in order to move around during our daily activities. As people, similar to our personalities, our gait can be somewhat unique to us in the aspect of our movement or pattern for walking. Our initial process for sequencing or starting to maneuver on 2 feet takes place prior to even walking. Before initializing the movement for walking, we develop from infancy and become toddlers. There are milestones, markers for growth that let us know we're developing as we should. One of these being the ability to stand on our own 2 feet. Before we reach that point, we learn to crawl. As a result from this increased movement, as toddlers, we strengthen these muscles that allow us to perform more coordinated and controlled movement, such as standing upright and learning to support yourself while doing so. Your gait can be influenced by a variety of factors such as physical, height, weight, age, or environmentally. Surface being walked on, is it uneven? Shoes being worn? Mimicking the gait pattern of someone else you see, possibly by observing. This can be from parent to child. The pattern you develop gradually grows, and there is no set pattern that stays in place. As said before, a variety of factors can influence your gait. Variables can include also abnormalities or disorders or injuries that may occur throughout your lifetime and be debilitating on the body. Injuries can span from fractures located to the lower extremities to muscle tears and sprains on the lower part of the body. Injuries on the affected side tend to alter gait speed, stride, or the amount of strength that the limb can support. Abnormalities or disorders can have a direct impact on your ambulation and can stem from birth defects or disorders. In these cases, physical therapy or assistive devices may be implemented to give better support when walking independently. As stated before, gait is the pattern of movement used while walking or running. The whole process of walking can be broken down into a cycle that encompasses two major parts, that which also branches into more categories. The gait cycle can be simplified as one complete stride that will be repeated continuously during walking. It should be noted that the gait cycle begins and ends with foot contact. The gait cycle is divided into two major phases, the stand phase and the swing phase, for each leg. The stand phase begins with foot strike and ends when the foot lifts up the ground and the toe is lifted out of contact from the ground too, which now begins the swing phase, where the leg swings forward, initializing more forward movement, propelling the body onto a bigger stride. Numerous factors need to occur, however, to perform healthy and efficient movement, such as the foot optimally clearing the ground during swing phase. Foot clearance must be achieved for that also to happen. There must be adequate hip flexion, adequate joint movement, range of motion is there so it can adequately and optimally propel the body forward without due cause or injury. Knee flexion and foot dorsiflexion. Since the end product of walking is done through our muscles, propelling our body forward is important as they work efficiently and simultaneously to perform correct movement. To first understand the movement of walking, you must also know the importance of the neurological connection between it and the brain. While it may be something we perform continuously throughout our lives, it's actually quite a complex movement when broken down neurologically, especially when considering the fact that this movement first begins in the brain. It requires us to coordinate various muscle groups in different regions of the body to help land on our feet to the exact places where we want them to. Our brain can take into account various deficiencies present when we walk in order to adjust the gait pattern we use when walking. This could include experiencing asymmetry when walking due to limps, pain, certain underlying factors such as uneven surfaces. Our body automatically tries to adjust accordingly to what will help us walk with minimal obstruction. In order to understand how the muscles move during the gait cycle, we must first grasp how they move concentrically and eccentrically. Concentrically, by providing power and contracting through the movement, and eccentrically, by being stretched and providing control through the motion. When the foot accepts weight, this weight is first withheld at the end of the calcaneus of the foot, which will then follow the posterior chain, but first it will go into plantar flexion and make full contact with the ground. When this happens, the gluteus and hamstrings, both part of the posterior chains, both start to work concentrically to extend the hip and also propel the body forward and setting it in place for the next movement. In early stance, then you will go into a flexion and act as a cushion to absorb some of the shock of the body during walking. Gait can be impeded from following through with correct form by abnormalities present at birth or obtained throughout our lifetime. These can include malformed limbs, degenerative disorders, or injuries that may have debilitated the individual. Underlying factors such as posture, physical fitness, and disorders such as obesity can hinder a person's gait over time or even cause pain. When analyzing gait, a systematic approach should be appropriate for the reason it provides a structured way into looking into incorrect gait patterns, compensations, and crutches the patient may be prone to doing when walking. This can include, as an example, an individual with cerebral palsy who might have trouble walking due to tight, stiff, or spastic muscles brought on by the disorders. Visual things to notice for an individual with gait abnormalities could be their feet pointing inward, or an overflexion of the knees, lordosis, or holding hands out for stabilization when walking. Inspecting gait can be no simple task, as it goes extensively into an individual's family medical history, physical examinations, and sometimes x-rays depending on the case. A person's normal gait can be developed as early as 7 years old and progresses over time, adjusting through growth and maturation. Visual observation is one of the key factors in identifying abnormalities. Thanks to modern technology, gait can also be analyzed and measured via computer analyzation. When not working with this technology, as stated prior, visual observation of the gross motor function is important to diagnose a patient with abnormalities. How the patient walks, are there any balance issues, do they have any muscle weaknesses in the lower extremities that might cause lower muscle tone impeding optimal movement for walking. Assistive devices have spanned the length of time centuries ago, considering the crutch itself is considered one of the most widely used and known throughout the world. Assistive devices such as cranes, crutches, or walkers all serve to meet one common goal: providing aid and support facilitating the movement for walking when it's impaired due to disability or injury or any other debilitating disorder. There really is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to assistive devices, as many can actually serve to counter-improve movement and provide negative responses to patterns when using for ambulation. Some of the ones you might see commonly in a clinic might be braces, such as this for pediatrics, or these for a much larger individual, possibly in adolescence or adulthood. Although these are widely used, there is one also I'd like to mention, the gait belt, which is very widely used in physical therapy and serves to provide support for a patient learning or retraining to walk.